Hey guys, welcome back to the Lou Perez podcast on the Lions of Liberty Podcast Network. I am your host, Lou Perez, and today I'm very happy to be joined by a friend, a great filmmaker, documentarian, Mr. Rob Montz. Hello.
What's up, bro? What's up?
Good. Where are you beaming in from?
The headquarters of GoodKid Productions International is here in Richmond, Virginia, the heart of the Confederacy.
There, and you chose well. You know, I don't know which side won that war. We'll we can.
Let's not start with that. Let's not start with that.
Well, why don't we talk a little bit about GoodKid Productions, because people can definitely check out. You have a whole library of material on YouTube. You have short mini documentaries, and then you also have really great interviews, often with controversial figures. Some of my favorites were your discussions with Glenn Loury and Amy Wax, and a number of Roland Fryer. So you've been making a lot of interesting stuff for a number of years, and why don't you talk a little bit about GoodKid?
We should talk about our origin story, because it's intimately intertwined with the origin story of GoodKid Productions, which is in my 20s, I got inspired to work in documentaries. I had a degree in philosophy and zero hard technical skills on how to do it. I just had an abundance of excessive self-confidence, which I've learned can be an advantage in your 20s, but potentially can be a psychological liability in your 40s. But back then, endless amount of self-confidence. So I wanted to make a documentary. I got inspired to make a documentary about the North Korean propaganda apparatus, specifically how it's actually custom built in ways that tap into Korean culture and human psychology that I think make it an important piece of the puzzle when you're trying to figure out why is it that this backwards socialist basket case of a country continues to survive. And I think that the propaganda apparatus is actually an essential part of that. The question was, who would give money to someone with no marketable skills and no track record of successfully producing videos to make a video? It's a good question. They're a good question. But I ultimately got a small grant from the Moving Picture Institute, which is the organization that I met you in, also a libertarian-oriented nonprofit. And it's been a completely unpredictable succession of events since then, after that documentary came out, in which we've been able to build a company, build bigger audiences, build better documentaries. And the thing that I'd seen back then was that the tools of documentary production had grown rapidly more sophisticated while also growing rapidly cheaper. So you could even 15 years ago make something that looked just as good as anything on a major network for a completely reasonable price. So it's like, why is it that we can't make stuff that is of the highest possible level of technical ability, but happens to be informed with our politics, which I think it's fair to say doesn't get normal representation among legacy media corporations, right? Why can't we just combine both? And I think insofar as we've been able to have any success, it's that we do that. We do that where we really care about storytelling. We care about this thing called human emotions, which libertarians tend not to display an aptitude for, but we also want our stuff to look premium. We want it to look as good as a David Fincher film. And the docs of ours that have popped off are the ones that I think most successfully combine those elements.
Yeah, and I think one of the things too is, over the years of you making these, I think you've really established your style. Like when I see something pop up on screen, I know pretty quickly that it's a Rob Montz production. And I think a big part of that is not only, visually, what you're doing, but how you incorporate sound and music, I think is really good, because so much of, stuff when it's kind of like slop, like, documentary, that's out there where, they'll go and they'll get like, they'll buy some track from Pond 5 for like 4.99, and it sounds like and it's like, "Oh, everyone uses that track in every single one of their videos," whether it's like, "Oh, this one I want to sound a little bit more hip hop, so here's the 3.99 hip hop track," where you I mean, you basically I mean, you could be, I think, putting together just soundtracks of what your docs are, and I could see people actually just listening to that as well. So you do a really great job with that for sure.
Yeah, bland, kinda corporate. The other thing too is that frequently people use the same stale tracks,
Mm.
and they're hoping that it'll do the work that they're not accomplishing in putting together the story, right?
Mhm.
So they want the audience to feel the emotion of fear or joy. They want the audience to feel a sense of menace or intrigue. And instead of doing the intricate work of building story that would actually organically make people feel those emotions, they just like, right, type into Pond 5, menacing song, and
Yeah,
hope that if they just plop that bad boy in there for 4.99, it'll do the work for them.
yeah. And also, you know, and like I said, in addition to the documentaries you make, you also have, these, longer conversations with, with these figures in academia and politics and culture. And what I like about them is that you are having these interesting adult conversations with interesting people. Whereas I've had experiences in the past where I'd be producing a video for somebody that it's just a talking head, and uh, they want to cut it as if it's like a TikTok, and it's like
Yeah.
I'm trying to explain to them, no, you have like this is like an 80-year-old person with an incredible amount of history, talking about this really interesting subject. It works on its own. We don't need all these jump cuts and shit and all this goofy stuff. And I feel like there's a lot of people are trying rather than trying to kind of do their own thing or create the new thing that people are going to want to see. They're looking around them and saying, "Okay, what's working?" And without realizing, like, well, it works for very specific things. You can't, you couldn't take this is a really stupid example. You can't take The Godfather and TikTok it. It's just not going to work.
I mean, I think we're doing more interviews now, and it's always front of my mind. How do you justify people paying a minute of attention to you
Mhm.
when they're having 15 terabytes of stimulation thrown at their face every single day when they're on the internet? I think the success of guys like Lex Fridman is proof that people will stick around for stuff that requires a little bit of patience and some time to properly unfurl.
Mhm.
I know I personally both don't like and have no aptitude in making short videos. I'm personally just kind of petrified and have a pretty strong stress response to TikTok. So I couldn't do it even if I wanted to. And yeah, so I think it's, I mean, you know what it is. It's basically, it's the same thing with the docs. It's basically try to blend together an organic expression of what I find intellectually and aesthetically stimulating and hope there's a sufficient number of people that like my unique blend
Mhm.
that I can keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I'm 42. I've been at it for about 10 years now, so it's working so far. We'll see how it goes.
Well, something too, I think is important, when it comes to docs is about, access that you have. And you made a great documentary about Brown University, which is your alma mater. And, having gone to Brown, you were able to get like Glenn Loury, on camera. And this was before Glenn was, as
Yeah,
big,
I
as
got
big
him
as he is.
early. He was an
You got him.
undervalued asset back then.
Yeah, yeah. I think you blew up his career. You were the Svengali that made it happen. But then also, like, when you were talking about, the North Korea doc, I mean, God, how many people go to North Korea from the US? I mean, how the hell did that even happen? How'd that come to pass?
You can't underestimate the value of excessive bordering on delusional self-confidence when you're in your 20s, Lou. That's what it was. That's what it was. I bought a camera for like $500 on Amazon, barely knew how to use it. Back then, there's specialty tour companies that will take you from Beijing to North Korea because the only way that you can get in as an American citizen is through specific flights.
Mhm.
And you just talk to people and try to shoot things and not get arrested. That was it.
Yeah.
But I have to say, and this doesn't always have to be about this, the ultimate expression of access plus emotional connection is the doc that's dropping in December.
Yeah. We should talk we should definitely talk about that. Is it titled Pale Fire? Is that how you're
It's right now it's called Paradise Abandoned
Okay.
Inside the Pacific Palisades Fire. That's the tentative title for now. We'll see what it's like when it actually drops. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure your audience is familiar with these fires that incinerated substantial chunks of Los Angeles.
Right.
The section of Los Angeles that was heaviest hit is a affluent coastal neighborhood called Pacific Palisades. I was born and raised in the Palisades, and my childhood house burned down. And the stuff that I like the most in doing is some taking some event like that tends to be very quickly described in neat partisan categories, and then everybody moves on, and going back into it and breaking and debunking those pat viral explanations and unearthing some deeper scandalous truth that got missed in those first 72 hours of media frenzy, right?
Mm.
So that's what I like doing. I'm from that area. And so when the fire happened, uh, it felt like an odd cosmic alignment between the one thing that I'm capable of doing, which is telling visual stories, and what the universe actually needed, which was a really good, hard-hitting documentary investigation that unearthed that deeper truth. And people can judge for themselves when it comes out on YouTube. It's on my channel. GoodKid Productions is our production house. Everything's getting released on my channel under Rob Montz.
Oh,
They can judge for themselves, but I can say definitively that every documentary investigation into the Palisades Fire that's come out since, including from 60 Minutes, including from NBC, including from Fox News, every single one of them sucks and doesn't hit these deeper truths that I think we were able to unearth. They both look boring and bland and also don't do that necessary digging to show what people missed. And there's a huge thing that people missed.
mhm. Well, I could say, so I know a number of people who, lost their homes there, and I, gave to their GoFundMes, and then I moved on with my life, you know?
Right.
And it is something where it's like, yeah, I think I did a nice thing, but then I moved on with my life, whereas it's like, no, this is a subject that still hasn't been, completely dissected and examined, and it's a good thing that, someone like yourself has made it a mission to say, "Hey, I'm gonna go and tell this story."
Well, the fundamental misperception, which I didn't realize was as prominent as it was as we've been screening the documentary for private audiences,
Yeah.
is how the vast majority of people outside of the LA metro area essentially buy the explanation that it was just bad luck and inevitability and just the product of the laws of nature. That there actually wasn't much that could have been done in order to prevent this catastrophe. And I can tell you for a fact that is not true. But the counterbalancing thing is a lot of it tends to be hyper-partisan explanations that we're trying to identify specific human errors, either from the left or the right, also got it wrong.
Hmm.
And they glommed on to certain explanations that it turns out under deeper investigation are utterly irrelevant. So there were some very specific human errors that allowed a tiny little spark in some dry brush about a mile and a half from my home to turn into a wildfire that incinerated like 70% of the most sought after real estate in Los Angeles. There are specific human errors, but they're not the ones that you've been told.
Hmm. Uh, can you reveal? I mean, you don't have to give it all away, but what are some? Always one era. Maybe top five. What's your fifth?
I'm not gonna give you 5. Yeah, you'll
No,
get 5.
no. Out of the top five, just the fifth. Or something like that.
The So there's a guy by the name of Allan Feld who was the first call into the fire department because he's the first person to spot the fire, probably within 5 minutes of it having started. He has gone on the record with federal ATF personnel, the New York Times, and GoodKid Productions. Those are the only people he's talked to.
Hmm.
And there's a part of the doc in which he goes through the timeline between having reported the fire and when the firefighters showed up, where he details that despite the fact that under formal municipal policy, the firefighters were supposed to show up within a matter of minutes, it took them 22 minutes to arrive. Exactly why there was a delay, we get into. I'm not going to give that away.
Yeah.
You can't say definitively that if they'd showed up earlier, it would have prevented the catastrophe. Nobody really knows. But over that period of time in which they had not shown up, which Allan testifies to because he was there, it went from what looked like a relatively manageable brush fire to an unstoppable inferno that was heading down unabated towards the Palisades Village. So that's the kind of thing you're going to see.
Yeah. Oh, how long is the doc? How long is this one?
I got that mini doc in me, so it's about 25 minutes. 25
Well, that's
minutes.
great. That's no, I think that's I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that was left on the cutting room floor that do you have a Patreon or something like that where people can get, a look behind the curtain?
Yeah, Substack. They can just check out GoodKid Productions or check out Rob Montz on GoodKid Productions.
Cool. So it was your childhood home. Well, were your parents still living there, or oh wow.
Oh,
Were
yeah.
they able to save anything?
No. No, I mean, I had video footage of my brother coming at noon of the fire and having to badger my stepfather into leaving, which, I think there were something like 2 dozen people that died from the fire in the Palisades, and they were uniformly elderly people who didn't wanna leave their homes and didn't have family members to forcibly extract them.
Mhm.
You don't know definitively, but there is a chance that my brother saved my stepfather's life. But no, it's totally incinerated, but my mom is one of these rare Palisades residents. Maybe this will be interesting to your audience. Like, I think people from a distance assume the Palisades was uniformly ultra rich.
Right.
And again, it is very pricey real estate, but it's actually this combination of people that have bought in the last 15 years. A lot of it is East Coast money and tech ballers, but there's a sizable chunk of the Palisades, about 25% of it, that's legacy families that bought in the '70s and the '80s when the Palisades was not the most punishing real estate in Los Angeles, but was considered to be a cheaper alternative to Santa Monica. That's the generation I'm from. That's the generation of people that I know, right?
Yeah.
It's people that bought in and have watched their houses appreciate 5,000%, and the vast bulk of their wealth was in their house. And then their house burns down, and thanks to, some light regulatory mismanagement from California authorities, they either are uninsured or underinsured and are out, $1 million or $2 after all is said and done and can't move back. So there's been a huge exodus of people from that generation that have left because it just didn't make sense financially. It was impossible. But my mom is one of the rare members of that group that is rebuilding. I looked at her architectural plans about a month ago. But the vast majority of people have left that were in that category. They couldn't
You know,
afford to rebuild.
to what you said about, people out the outsiders thinking that, everyone who lived in the Palisades were wealthy. It's almost like that's almost used as kind of like a justification to not care,
Yeah.
right? It's like, "Oh, they're wealthy. Oh god, who gives a shit?" I know, this woman, Jackie Clark, who was my old, improv comedy coach. I remember she had posted about, her house having burned down. I don't think they weren't in the Palisades. I think they were in, was it Eagle Rock or something like that?
Yeah.
I think they're in that neighborhood. My apologies if I have it wrong. Um, but her husband was a huge, record collector of jazz, right? So he
Yeah.
has I think he had something like 10,000 records, albums, all gone, just
Good
fucking
lord.
gone. Um, and you know, anyone who has a home, I think, can understand. Before we started recording, you were, talking. You had some nice things to say about this bookcase behind me.
Yeah. Bookcase
Um,
game is nice, Lou. It's nice.
and I love this bookcase so much. I'm gonna be buried in this fucking thing like
Mhm.
that. I don't want a coffin. Just
Mm.
put me in this thing. Um, but you know, there, the idea of like, oh, should I feel bad about that guy who lost all of his, his record collection and their home and their children's stuff? Ooh, how much money does he make a year? Okay, he hit the cutoff. Now I can feel bad for
Yeah.
him,
It's
as
like, come
opposed
on,
to,
man.
yeah, you're
Everybody knows that a home is not just a home.
right.
It's a repository of memory and emotion. And if you're like my mom and you've been living in that home and had to fight my father during their divorce in order to keep that home,
Uh,
it's a lot more than just a couple bricks and some wood ply, right? Like it's
yeah,
a lot more than that. Let me tell you something else that kind of teases the doc a little bit to give people a real sense that yeah, the incineration of physical buildings can have some deeper spiritual resonance. Okay. And this is related to the massive story related to the Palisades fires that has not been reported anywhere. So, day 2 of the fire, right? The fires burned for about 12 hours. It's the morning, the day afterwards. Los Angeles, at that point, had been flooded with fire crews because California has a policy of mutual aid in which surrounding firefighter departments are kind of professionally obligated to reinforce any part of their area that doesn't is insufficiently staffed. LA's this is the morning of the second day of the fire. Los Angeles had been flooded with fire crews. There's top-ranking city officials on the beach next to the Palisades holding press conferences promising the American people they're going to do everything in their power to save this place. Winds had died down substantially. And yet, something like 1,000 structures that were standing that morning on day 2 burned down by that evening.
Whew.
And that's because despite these fancy press conferences on the beach, that day in the Palisades, the streets are empty. There are no firefighters there. And to give you an example, Pacific Palisades was founded by Methodists about 100 years ago. The oldest standing building in the city was a Methodist church that I went to preschool at. It's standing the morning of day 2. Its tower catches fire around 10:30, 11 a.m. on day 2. There is an idle fire truck less than 2 blocks away. And by the end of the day, the entire building had burned down. So what's up with that, Lou?
Yeah, what's that fire truck doing? Just hanging out?
It's a good question. That's a good question.
It's really hard. It's really difficult to hear stuff like this and, you know, and obviously asking, a question, why is that allowed to happen? And, part of me is just like, what could a possible conspiracy be? Like what the fuck? Like what other explanation is like you have obviously a tool to put out the fire in a fire truck and just letting it go. Mm,
Those are good questions. People have to watch the doc to get the answer to those questions. Yeah.
my goodness.
Yeah.
Well, so you said your mom is going to be rebuilding. You've seen the plans. What does that timeline look like?
It keeps getting stretched.
Yeah.
It keeps getting stretched. There's been some regulatory streamlining. California is not exactly known as a place that is accommodating to efficient home construction, but there's still a lot of gunk in the system. So the dates I get emailed by my mom keep getting pushed back. So we'll see.
Wow.
We'll see.
And what? Oh yeah, cause
Yeah. I think also your audience will appreciate that it's the Palisades fire is the definitive evidence as to why one ought to prioritize merit as opposed to identity categories when electing policymakers.
Mhm.
The the mayoral race about a year before the fire was between Karen Bass, a black woman, and longtime high-standing member of the Democratic Party establishment, and a guy by the name of Rick Caruso, who is a kinda real estate mogul who's built a bunch of lucrative mall properties all throughout Los Angeles. He's, like, vaguely moderately Republican, although he did run as a Democrat because it's impossible to win elected office in Los Angeles County as a Republican. Caruso and Bass ran against each other, and Caruso lost, and Mayor Bass was in charge the day of the fire. It's instructive that in Pacific Palisades, there is a Rick Caruso property. There's a large, high-end shopping district in the village, the heart of the Palisades, and the village is still completely intact. When we went there to shoot, you drive by it, bunch of pristine buildings, some minor burn damage, and every other block around it is completely burned to a crisp.
Hmm.
And that's attributable to a variety of things, including the fact that Caruso had built these buildings with fire retardant material. He'd pre-deployed private firefighters when there was a high risk of wildfires given the nature of the winds that morning, and a variety of other things. But you have standing these totems to what was it? They're, this the buildings are monuments to the power of merit, and the incinerated husks of all the buildings around it are monuments to the costs of identity politics. And that's being reflected in the fact that Rick Caruso is probably gonna be governor in a year or 2.
I remember at the time this one video going around about a fire woman. I guess her name is definitely of a lesbian sort. Where it was something so ridiculous, like, you know, are you strong enough? Like, what if my husband, is caught in a fire? Are you strong enough to pick him up? And
Yeah.
she said something along the lines of, "Well, he shouldn't have gotten himself in that situation to begin with." And what was just so mind-blowing was it's a little crazy that a fireman, fire person, whatever they're gonna call it, would say this. It's even crazier that they would say this on camera, and it's even crazier that the person editing this promotional video would put this in the promotional video.
Right.
Um,
Right. Although one of the things that we try to debunk is it became something that conservative media fixated on is that they think that diversity, equity, and inclusion within the fire department was a major cause of this disaster. It's not true. It's not true. And as satisfying as that might be for the Fox News viewers in Oklahoma City to hear, it doesn't actually reflect reality on the ground. That wasn't the issue with the fire department. The issue with the fire department was that they were non-existent on day 2 and let 1,000 buildings burn to the ground.
mm,
That's the more relevant data point.
yeah. Yeah, I guess it's, if a fire's burning and a fireman's not there to put it out, well, then the fireman's not there to put it out. It doesn't matter if it's, black, white, or how they identify
Identity categories do not matter. It
at
doesn't
all.
matter. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. What, what, if anything, like what changes are being made to stop something like this from happening again, or at least not causing as much damage?
My sense from the people of the Palisades is they're operating under the assumption that no one's coming to protect them again. They're not they are not seeing municipal authorities learning the lessons and making adjustments to things like environmental policy or firefighter readiness, right? Or keeping the San Ynez Reservoir filled so that there's sufficient water supply in the outbreak of a wildfire. That it's what they're doing is individually hardening their homes. So rebuilding their homes, incorporating all the best practices for how to have it not get burned down. I mean, there are some relatively simple things. I think like the vast majority of the houses burned down. It wasn't because of direct contact with flames. It's because there would be embers shot at the houses from high winds. Those embers collect at the walls of the building and inevitably get through the vent system, get into the house, and burn down the house from the inside. There's some pretty commonsensical things you can do to prevent something like that from happening, and that's what they're doing. I don't no one that I've talked to has indicated they think there's gonna be a tectonic shift in public policy in Los Angeles.
There
They're
could be.
investing in their own protection and then occasionally sending mass emails about, campaigns to secede from Los Angeles County.
Uh,
So that should give you a sense of, their level of faith in their beloved elected officials.
shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you talk about tectonic shifts, I'm like, oh, that's another thing you got to worry about.
Yeah, come on now, we got enough.
You got to.
Can I do one little brief marketing thing? Because I gotta
Yep.
go in about
Yeah. Yeah.
5
Yeah.
minutes, which is, uh, we are screening this documentary before we release it publicly in West Los Angeles later this month. It'll come out in early December, but we're screening it November 23rd in
November
Santa
20th.
Monica. Any members of your audience that are in Los Angeles are more than welcome to come. They can find all the details on the front page of just robmontz.com, the theater, and they can RSVP there. And if people are interested, they can also see the trailer at robmontz.com or on my channel.
Yeah, and I'll definitely have a link to the in the description, and to make sure that they can see it, I'm going to shift some things around in my release schedule. Make sure I get that out in time. Um, yeah, man. It's in sort of like the world that we operate in. It's always like, okay, what's your next project? Moving on to the next thing. But I feel like the way that you've positioned the story so far, I feel like there's going to be a lot more to this story, even after your doc comes out.
Yeah,
And I
we're
hope
in
that it gets a lot of light.
very early conversations about turning it into a feature and trying to go full Hollywood. But I've learned not to. I'm trying to do less of the ego-driven over-promising and under-delivering, and more about the execution on it. So that's certainly something in the cards.
Right on. Rob Muntz, Good Kid Productions, guys. Not only are you going to want to check out his new documentary about the Palisades, but you're going to want to watch his library stuff too. And I will have links to all that. Rob, thank you so much for joining me from Good Kid headquarters.
Yeah. Bro, Lou, thank you for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
You got